Each election roadshow with every candidate standing here in the Windsor constituency next on 104.1 FM.
The Andrew Peach Show. Every constituency, every candidate. The Andrew Peach Election Roadshow.
BBC Radio Berkshire.
Join the debate.
So if you live not only in Windsor but also Sonning Hill or Sunningdale, Old Windsor, Horton, Raisbury, Colnbrook, Eton Wick, Datchet, Wingfield, Warfield, Binfield, Ascot, even as far as Jennet's Park, the new development on the outskirts of Bracknell, you live in the Windsor parliamentary constituency, and the candidates whose names will be on your ballot paper are here to answer your questions between now and 10. Please come and join us just at the bottom of Peascod Street by the post office. Ask your question directly to the politicians who are here, and if you've already given us your question, we'll do our very best to get the answer for you between now and 10 this morning. So Tariq Malik is the UKIP candidate for the Windsor constituency. Hi Tariq.
Hello there.
Good morning, good to have you here. George Fussey, the Lib Dem candidate. Hi George.
Good morning.
We've got Fiona Dent for Labour. Hi Fiona.
Good morning everybody.
Wisdom Da Costa, Independent. Hi Wisdom.
Good morning.
And we've got Adam Afriyie, who's the Conservative candidate. Hi Adam.
Great to see you again, Ed.
Let's start by talking about Heathrow, because round here, as you guys will know, this is the election issue. Not only whether Heathrow should be allowed to expand, but just living with the aircraft noise that listeners will be able to hear every few seconds over our heads right now. George Fussey for the Liberal Democrats. Should Heathrow get an extra runway?
Absolutely not. Lib Dems are implacably opposed to an extra runway. We do not want an extra 260,000 flights from Heathrow. We do not want an extra 50 million visitors coming to fly from Heathrow. We don't want the congestion that's going to create, the disruption that the build is going to create, and we don't want all the pollution.
What about the jobs it creates?
The jobs it creates are important for the economy, but they could be created somewhere else, so we don't have to have them here. It's unsustainable, we think, environmentally, and that's why Lib Dems are implacably opposed, both locally and nationally, to any runway at Heathrow, Gatwick or Stansted.
So that's similar but not quite what Nick Clegg said to me on the show about this. He's talking about waiting for the Davis Commission and all of that. So whatever the Davis Commission says, you're saying if Liberal Democrats are involved in the government after May the 7th, they'll be opposing the expansion of Heathrow, even if that's what the experts say is the best way forward.
Yes, well, we are opposed to it. It's in the manifesto. It was voted for at conference in a very democratic way. And for me, it's a complete deal breaker. We do not want that extra runway at Heathrow.
I'm not sure that's a deal breaker for your leader. I'm not sure he said it's something that is an absolute red line for him, but there we go.
OK, well, what Nick certainly said is that what the Davis Commission says is not set in tablets of stone. So it is something that will have to be looked at. But for me, it's a deal breaker. And for Lib Dems in the manifesto, nationally and locally, we are implacably opposed to Heathrow.
Fiona Dent, I'm a bit confused about the Labour position on this, because when you were in government, you guys were absolutely in favour of Heathrow expansion and a third runway, and now you're waiting for the Davis Commission as well.
Certainly we are, but I would tell you that perhaps the most important issues that have actually been raised with me by email from residents is the NHS, and also...
Well, come on to all of that. We're talking about Heathrow.
I've only had 10 emails about Heathrow. I've had hundreds and hundreds about tax avoidance and the NHS. On Heathrow, I'm concerned about the Davis Commission. It's going to report just about a month after the election, and the parameters of that commission have really only focused on the economic impact. So the social impact, the environmental impact, and the public health impact have been largely ignored.
Right. So, I mean, Ed Miliband said earlier in the programme that even when he was in government, part of a government that was in favour of a third runway, he always had his concerns about it. If the Davis Commission, as most people expect, says, yeah, expand Heathrow, what will Labour do?
We will put in place a proper consultation. We're going to consult people about the issues that they want to be consulted about, which is what they're writing to me about. And also we will ensure that it's a public consultation that they can engage with.
And when you've had the public consultation, you'll expand Heathrow? Probably. That's where the party's going to go on this, isn't it?
That's what you're saying. I wouldn't dream.
That's what you said last time you were in government, and you haven't given us a clear answer since.
I'm giving you a clear answer now. We would consult before we do absolutely anything on Heathrow, and we would consult with local people, because it's local people who define what we should be consulting about.
I get that. You ask local people, and you're saying that with the only thing that gets considered. You throw the Davis Commission report in the bin. If local people say they don't want Heathrow expanded, you won't expand it.
Certainly not. Certainly not. It's reporting on the economic impact largely. We will certainly look at that.
Let's bring in Wisdom Da Costa, independent candidate. Should Heathrow be allowed to expand, Wisdom?
No, shouldn't be allowed to expand. Not for a third runway. I think we've supported them with their Cranford appeal so we can get better equalisation of noise over Windsor, but no expansion.
No expansion at all. You'd rather that expansion was at Gatwick or anywhere else, regardless of the economic cost to our area here, because then it's too noisy.
When you look at the economic cost, with unemployment rate in Windsor at about 1.5%, so that's 1,000 people in Windsor, we're talking about 120,000 extra jobs potentially. That's 70,000 houses. That's another 140,000 people. So the benefit to Windsor will be very, very small economically, but the disruption to Windsor, both environmentally and in terms of congestion and health is a big issue for me. It will be phenomenal.
It's a noisy BA jet overhead, isn't it, right now? Tariq Malik for UKIP. Should Heathrow be allowed to expand?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this is something that we've created a white paper on Manston Airport, and we need to look at other alternatives. We need to look at the pollution impact that it will have by creating the third runway. In addition, where are we with pollution in terms of at the capacity at the moment? So, yes, we're against this, absolutely.
OK, Adam Afriyie for the Conservatives. Your party seemed to have done something of a U-turn. You went into the 2010 election saying there was no way there'd be a third runway, and I bet my house that if you are in government after May the 7th, that you guys will expand Heathrow, if that's what the Davis Commission recommends.
Well, I very much look forward to having your house, because for the last 10 years since I was MP for Windsor, I've been absolutely clear, no third runway. And it's not just about NIMBYism. It's not just about the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, the millions of people who will be affected by adverse noise conditions and pollution, but it's also not in the national interest, not in the national economic interest, not in our regional interest, and it's not in the interest of consumers who will have higher prices for their airfares if we expand Heathrow.
So you're trying to persuade me, but you haven't persuaded your own party leadership. Where's the commitment in the Tory manifesto this time that says no third runway?
Well, Andrew, that's where you'd be slightly wrong, because basically I was first elected here in 12 years ago, and the first big win that we had with other Conservative MPs was to rule out a third runway, and this was a huge step forward, to rule out a third runway for the last Parliament. Now what we have is the party itself will wait for the recommendations of the Davies Commission, and remember, they're not out yet. If Davies is sensible, he will recommend Gatwick, because it will bring down prices for consumers. And listen to this, rather than spending £20 billion of taxpayers' money and possibly increasing the deficit, Gatwick costs the taxpayer nothing, so it makes complete sense to go for Gatwick. We have to wait for those for his recommendations before we can decide what. You
must be disappointed that commitment that you fought so hard for is not there in your manifesto for 2015.
Not in the slightest, no, because basically
that's exactly what you want.
No, not in the slightest, because our manifesto is quite clear. We're going to await the recommendations of the Davies Commission and then make a judgment. And what I'm saying is that I'm optimistic that if Davies is sensible, that he will recognise that Gatwick is the right option. We can't allow Heathrow. Remember, it's a private company with shareholders making profits. We can't allow them to entrench their monopoly further at the expense of taxpayers, the environment, people in Windsor, and consumers.
Yeah, you're making a good fist of saying, "Oh, I've always been right about this," but you wanted Boris Island, the Thames Estuary Airport. So, from your point of view, Howard Davis has already got it wrong, hasn't he?
From my point of view, yes. I mean, it seems quite clear to me that if we want Britain to be a wonderful, outward-looking, dynamic global trading nation, we will, as Davies even acknowledges, we'll need 3, 4, 5 runways over the next 50 to 100 years. We've always made these kind of piecemeal decisions, sticking plaster solutions. One runway here, one runway there, affecting thousands of people, and in this case, knocking down hundreds, if not thousands of homes. So it seems to me if we want a long-term solution, far better to have an offshore airport where their planes can fly day and night without disturbing anybody. If we're going for a short-term sticking plaster, that sticking plaster should be at Gatwick. 5
local politicians, all opposed to the expansion of Heathrow. Still bet it happens. Now, let's bring in Sarah from Wingfield Row, passing by in Windsor Town Centre. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Who knew when you got up this morning that you'd be taking part in our election debate?
I like being up early. I was mucking out the horses at 5 o'clock this morning.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So, let's have your question for the people who want your vote in Wingfield Row. What would you like to ask about?
I would like to know is what's happening to all the on-the-beat officers. Not so much in Wingfield Row, but everywhere else. We used to have on-the-beat officers you used to see from Bracknell Town Centre twice a week. We don't see them anymore. I go out riding, and the classic thing is, for the past 4 years, I've been mistaken for a mounted police officer. I've had 3 police officers stop me who think I'm a police officer. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not. And they said, well, you know, you're doing a good job. And I said, well, where are you guys? They said, cutbacks.
Right. So our own Police and Crime Commissioner says if the police budget in the Thames Valley is cut any further, as pretty much all the parties propose, that we will see even fewer officers on the streets. You're concerned about that, Sarah. Let me ask Tariq Malik for UKIP to answer directly. What do you think about the numbers of police in the area? Are there enough of them?
Oh, absolutely not. This is part of our manifesto. We've made a pledge that we will increase the number of police officers, especially on the beat.
How will you pay for it?
Through the central government. Obviously, we've come up with a manifesto that's reliable and it's accurate. And, obviously it brings in many other issues in terms of foreign aid and being part of the EU. And, of course, we will finance this, absolutely.
Right, so are you talking about not reducing the number of officers or actually increasing the spending on police in our area?
Absolutely increasing.
By how much?
I'm not sure at this stage, but the manifesto is quite clear that we will increase, absolutely.
OK, Tariq Malik for UKIP, Wisdom Da Costa, Independent. Just answer Sarah's question. Do you think there are fewer police officers, especially in the more rural parts of the constituency?
Well, speaking to some of the police, I would say that's probably the case. I think we do need to increase the budget and support our police. It's Kate Ford and the whole team who run the place locally. One of the really worrying things for the police is that as we have cuts to social services, now listen to this, they are actually involved in dealing with mental health cases. Certainly a relative of ours has been dealt with and handled very sensitively by the police, rather than social services. So they are being stretched and stretched and stretched, and I definitely would want to support them 100% more.
Wisdom Da Costa standing as an independent candidate to be the Windsor MP. Fiona Dent for Labour. Your Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's talked about getting rid of police and crime commissioners, which will save an amount of money, but we're still talking in a Labour government about police being an unprotected area of spending where there will be cuts.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised at what the current local police and crime commissioner has been saying, because it's his post that's going to go. But quite frankly, we need the money from his posts and all the other posts for the front line of policing. The other thing that the other place we're going to get money for the police force is from their commissioning process, their procurement. We're going to join that up around the country, because at the moment there's a lot of money wasted in that in that way by individual police forces doing their own procurement.
So that's a couple of examples of how you might be able to mitigate the cuts that you will make to the police from where they are now. You're not going to increase spending on the police, though. You're going to reduce it. Well,
we've always prioritised policing, and if you judge us by our record, we raised the numbers of police in the Thames Valley force by about 700 during our last period in government, and we brought in the PCSOs. So we brought in 500 of those to the Thames Valley. So please trust us on this one. We do protect the police force.
Well, forget trust us on this one. Let's talk about facts. The facts are you've got to make public spending cuts under your own plans, and policing is an unprotected area of public spending that will be cut under Labour.
As I've said, we will do our best to protect the front line of policing, and we're going to do that by being more creative with our budget through procurement and getting rid of police and crime commissioners.
Adam Afriyie for the Conservatives. Your own police and crime commissioner, Conservative politician, says that your plans will mean fewer officers on the streets of Berkshire, including the areas that Sarah's concerned about.
Anthony is doing a good job. Obviously, as the Police and Crime Commissioner, it is his job to argue for as big a budget as he can possibly get to try to fight crime. But let's look at the facts. Crime across Berkshire, crime in the Thames Valley has gone down. And whilst I actually agree with the lady from Wingfield, it's a beautiful area, that it is reassuring to see police officers on the beat. The key thing is to make sure that actually crime goes down. So around the Royal Borough of Windsor Maidenhead, there are other uniformed. There are other kinds of uniform presence on the street, like the community wardens. And here I was out the other night in Windsor itself with the street wardens, who are doing a really good job to have a visible presence on the streets, and it is making a difference. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if there's going to be more funding available for policing across the country, not just the Thames Valley, you need a strong economy, and that's what the Conservatives are going to deliver to make sure the resources
If Anthony
are
Stansford, our Police and Crime Commissioner, if what he says about policing is wrong, what on earth is the point in having him?
Well, I've just said that what he says is absolutely right. It's his job to fight for a bigger budget. If I was a police and crime commissioner, I would want a bigger budget.
I think you're saying what the Home Secretary said to us when we were debating this in Maidenhead, that actually he is wrong. You don't need more police officers.
No, not in the slightest. I think that he's absolutely right to argue for a bigger budget. If you have a job in society and you want the highest amount of resources available to you, so it's quite right to argue for it. The question is, do we have a secure enough, a big enough economy to increase the budget at this time when we're still running a deficit?
I'm going to press you on this. What he's actually saying is, if you're elected, under your plans, where there'll be more public spending cuts and policing is unprotected, that he will have to reduce the number of officers on the streets of this area. That's what he's saying. If you're elected, you will see fewer officers on the streets of Windsor. You're telling me that's right or wrong?
I'm saying that is a negotiating position, and of course, if I were in the same position, I would make the strongest arguments I possibly could. But remember, as the economy picks up, and we've got the highest growth rate of virtually any developed country in the world from a really deep recession several years ago, as the economy picks up, there will be more resources available for all of the kind of good things that we want in society.
Word from George Fussey from the Lib. Oh, Sarah, come back in if you want to.
We're looking at it's going to be at least another year, another 2 years. That's too late. At the moment where I've been riding, there's a lot of people, a lot of the residents come out and say it's good to see somebody outside on the mounted police officer having a look around. I said, I'm sorry, but I said, I'm not an officer. They said, but we need somebody up here. Their crime rate up in Winkfield is so low because they think they've got mounted police officers up there. Why have you not got a section, the police division have not got a section for the mounted police officers or the PCSOs? Train them up to ride. It's dead easy, it's cheap, but get them on horseback so they can look around, they can mobile, they can go out for hours on end and they can look into properties on horseback. They can see up, where people in cars can't, people on foot can't.
Okay, so it's a plea for horse-mounted police officers. What I suggest is that I'm very happy to feed that into Anthony Stansfeld when I next see him, but it's for the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable to decide how they do the policing on the ground. But what I'm saying is that whatever resources that we want, we've got to have a strong economy to deliver those. And when we're still running a 90,000 million deficit every year, we're not in a position. I don't think it's going to be 1 year, but I certainly think within 3 or 4 years, when the deficit's gone, then we'll be in a better position to provide more resources.
Also, one thing, just slightly going off of the subject, we'll be slightly going off, and this is an interesting thing for you, all of you. I worked in the airport for 14 years.
Tell you what, I'm going to pause you. Just don't go anywhere, Sarah. I just want to let George comment about policing. George Fussey's the Lib Dems, and then we'll come back to you. George.
Lib Dems would like to sweep away the police and crime commissioners and replace them with police boards, which are set up from elected officials from across the Thames Valley area. So councillors who have got a democratic view would be able to represent your case.
A bit like the old police authority. It used to cost more than the police and crime commissioners.
I'm afraid it is. These things tend to come around, but we think it would be a more democratic approach and actually a more effective approach in terms of...
More expensive approach?
No, we think we would save money from that and actually be able to reinvest that into the police force. But the issue in Windsor, I think probably, in central Windsor, is actually one of antisocial behaviour. And it's about joining together all the various players that we have, all the various agencies that we have in terms of the police, community wardens, the PCSOs, street angels. Everybody is trying to work, licensing authority as well. So okay. It's a joined up approach that we need. So.
Sarah, a quick word about the airport and then we better move on to other questions.
Very quickly about the airport. How many people of British nationalities do you think work at the airport? You're saying that bringing in another airport terminal, fair enough. I've been there and I've seen so many changes. I've been there for the 2 new openings of the terminals. But how many do you think are British nationalities that work in those there?
What's your answer to your own question, Sarah?
Saying, there'll be lots more employment for the British to go in to work at the airport. How can you guarantee that? Because when I work when I've worked up there for so many years, I can honestly say 25% are British.
Is that a problem for you?
No, not at all. But if people are going around saying that they can bring in lots more employment for this country, hello, you're talking about lots of overseas nationalities that are working in that airport. Good on them, but what about us as well?
OK, Sarah, great to have you as part of the show. Thank you. I know you need to escape. Sorry if you're late. Blame me. BBC Radio Berkshire, we're in Windsor Town Centre with the candidates who are standing for election in this constituency. I mentioned it's not only Windsor, it's called Windsor, but the constituency goes off all over the place, taking in areas like Binfield and Warfield and Colnbrook and whatever. And people in those areas feel a bit ignored. I don't know how else to say it. We've got Katrina, who's been here this morning, saying, what do the candidates think the issues are in places like Binfield and Warfield? They never come here. We never see them. They don't know we exist. Fiona Dent for Labour.
Yeah, well, I was actually out in Warfield just last week.
Katrina missed you.
Yeah. Well, I went round a lot of houses. It was a beautiful day. It was sunny. So I did speak to people.
What did they say to you?
Well, they were actually, one of the real issues that comes out is they want to know why they're part of Windsor, Windsor constituency. And I've had exactly the same comments from people in Colnbrook, which is part of Slough Borough Council. And what I say to them is, look, this is to do with the Boundaries Commission. 18 years ago, the Tories pressed very, very hard to get the boundaries changed because they wanted 2 constituencies out of Windsor and Maidenhead.
Because there were a lot of people in the area, the population was huge.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. But next time there's a Boundaries Commission, possibly there will be one in the not-too-distant future, we need to get organised. And I'm very happy to get organised with those people so that they can say exactly what they want.
OK. George Fussey for the Lib Dems. Have you campaigned in Binfield and Warfield?
I haven't been there yet, I have to confess.
It's you Katrina's talking about.
Well, it may well be. I hope it isn't. But I have had emails from them, and certainly emails about planning issues are certainly up there in Warfield. But also just in terms of I agree with Fiona that it's a very strange shaped constituency, and it involves people we need to reach out to. So yeah.
Right, but maybe by visiting.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
We'll put that in your diary. Wisdom Da Costa, independent candidate to be MP for the Windsor constituency. Have you been to Windsor, to Binfield and Warfield in the last few days?
I haven't been campaigning out there yet. We'll be doing that this weekend. If you ask what some of the bigger issues are, we're certainly planning not irregularities, but certainly looking to build on Greenbelt. I think the current administration has swept away a number of planning constraints which allow more sensitive development, and we really need to look at reviewing that legislation so planning decisions can be made more sensitively to locals and the communities.
Right, Adam Afriyie, when was the last time you were in Binfield?
I think about 48 hours ago. No, I've been about 6 or 7 times over the last few weeks, and I can't even count the number of times. But basically, I just want to say to the people of Warfield and Binfield, and all of the areas on that side of the constituency, Ascot, Sunninghill, Sunningdale, is that basically you are part of the Windsor constituency, and I'm delighted that I've been able to represent you in Parliament, because
Katrina feels ignored. I mean, you're telling us what you've done, but she's feeling ignored.
To her now, I'm trying to speak to her now as I'm saying you're really welcome in the Windsor constituency. I was delighted when those parts of our area came into constituency, because they're kind of in keeping with the rest of the constituency. And I would say that there's more of an association between those areas and the Windsor constituency than perhaps between Bracknell Forest Town Centre and the Philip Lees constituency. But the key issues there are absolutely clear. I know Fiona wants more development in the constituency, but it's absolutely clear. It is absolutely clear that we must fight tooth and nail. We must fight just from reading your literature and from what you've said over the years. But it's absolutely clear that we must stand together with those local Conservative councillors and those local candidates to make sure that any further development there is in keeping with the area and it's reduced. And we've had some good wins so far. From the 12,000 originally, we're now down to 7,000 or 8,000. And I hope that in the future, if we can campaign together, we'll reduce the number even further.
Yeah, very, very good filibustering, Adam. No, what I want to see in the Windsor constituency is I want to see Labour policies, because what we're going to do...
For high levels of development?
No, listen to me, Adam, instead of trying to make it up for me. What we're going to do is we're going to stop the land banking in the UK if you vote in a Labour government. And what that is developers buying up plots of land with planning permission and then just sitting on them until they go up in price. We're going to have a policy of use it or lose it.
Okay.
Because we already have plenty of planning permissions to build the houses we need in the area.
Let me bring in Tariq Malik for UKIP. Have you been to campaign in Binfield and Warfield?
I have not at the moment, but our councillors have been out, and our plan is to go out there next week.
So Katrina's got a point. Of the 5 of you, only 2 of you have even been.
Absolutely. But it is in our plans, and we have made arrangements to go there next week.
Right, OK.
And I'm going there on Sunday, so if you...
OK, we can stop outbidding each other now. We've made the point. BBC Radio Berkshire 9:33. It's the Andrew Peach Election Roadshow from Windsor Town Centre, covering the Windsor constituency. I suppose I just wanted to very quickly go around on this. It is the safest Conservative seat historically in Berkshire. It's one of the safest Conservative seats in the country. It's had a Conservative representative at Westminster for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Does that make this all a bit pointless?
Absolutely not. I mean, Adam is so scared. I believe he's actually drafting in Republicans.
He doesn't look scared. I'm absolutely honest.
Why then? Ask him why he's drafting in Republicans from the US to help him.
Well, sorry, I can't help.
The Bush dynasty are vectoring in, are they?
That was a nice try, Fiona. Basically, all political parties. Actually, I'm not even sure if they're coming to Windsor, but all political parties through the Westminster Foundation, including the Labour Party, invite observers to look at election procedures. If Windsor's part of that, I'm delighted. If it's not, so be it. But the main thing is that before the last election, I had knocked on about 38,000 doors with the team. This time, I'm trying to do the same thing. The key thing is that Windsor is Conservative, I think, largely because people recognise that we deliver a better deal for the constituents in Windsor than a Labour Party that always seems to end up with more unemployment, higher taxes. And
is it true to say you'd get elected as a Conservative candidate in Windsor if you didn't try, if you didn't knock on a single door?
No,
you never turned up.
Not at all. I come from a tough background. I never take anything for granted, which is why I would guarantee you, out of all of the candidates, I'm far more active on the doorsteps than they are.
The reason for that is. It's because he hasn't got enough volunteers.
Would you stop repeating things which are completely untrue?
In the Conservative.
Let me bring in Wisdom Da Costa, independent candidate. It's one of the safest, or historically one of the safest Conservative seats in the UK. Why are you even bothering?
This is where you're feeling up and down the country. The people are fed up with party politics. Party politicians in particular, are really representing themselves and their party rather than local people first. When you look at scandal after scandal, expenses scandal, paedophile scandal, this ring being covered up, people are saying, well, enough is enough. There are 211 independent candidates from the age of 18 to 85 standing up and down the country. It's just a mood swing which is not being covered by the media, but it's happening there.
Okay. Tariq Malik, let me just bring you in on this. We'll just be really quick on this. When it's but people imagine, everyone we've met here in the centre of Windsor this morning tells me the outcome of the election's a foregone conclusion. That must be dispiriting for you when you're trying to campaign to win the seat.
Oh, absolutely not. If you look at the recent polls, I mean, we're coming up quite high within the recent polls. And, Adam can't take it for granted.
I'm going to break it to you. He's got about a majority of like 50%.
Well, he's got 19,000 majority, but people's attitudes over the last 3-4 years have changed. And people just do not trust the three main parties anymore. And this is why UKIP do represent the working class people and will do very well. And I'm confident we will do very well.
You're going to be the MP for Windsor in a fortnight.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we will certainly make a huge dent on the majority that he's got.
George Fussey sorry, Fiona, let me just bring in George Fussey for the Liberal Democrats, because he's standing there courteously, and I want to hear you as part of this discussion, George. Is there any point in Windsor?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, Lib Dems have always had a strong showing in Windsor, and we're proud of what we've done in coalition government in terms of paying down the deficit and producing policies which we're proud of, and we want to stand for those policies and give people the opportunity to vote for us.
I want to talk about flooding next. Quick question first, though. Were you disappointed, Adam Afriyie, not to be on David Cameron's list of potential successors? Because he somehow forgot you. You've been talked about as a future Tory leader. He mentions George Osborne. He mentions Theresa May. Never mentioned Adam Afriyie.
It's that old chestnut again. Basically, I'm not ambitious for any particular position. I've had a good life so far. I'm working really hard for the people of Windsor, and I'll continue to do so. Not ambitious a position, but I am ambitious we have a Conservative government so we can keep the taxes down and continue to improve public service.
David Cameron's opened the debate about who should succeed him, and for you that's Boris Johnson if you can't have the job yourself.
No. I'm backing David Cameron. I hope that he's there for at least another 20 years because we've got a lot of work to do.
Holding him prisoner in Downing Street. Doesn't he want the job himself for that long now?
Well, I'm sorry, Sam, but he may want to go, but we may want to keep him there.
Yes. Right, let's talk about flooding then. A lot of politicians parading around the flooded areas of Berkshire last year when we were all underwater. But has anything really changed since then? Let's talk about Wraysbury specifically. What's happened in Wraysbury since Wraysbury was flooded? George Fussey for the Lib Dems.
Gosh, I really don't have an idea what's happened in Wraysbury other than they've
not another place you haven't been, is it?
It's a place I go to, but we haven't canvassed there yet, I'm afraid. So
right, okay. So George doesn't know. Tariq Malik for UKIP. what needs to happen, what has happened in Wraysbury to try and stop that awful situation we had where people were trapped in their own homes, being rescued by boats, calling for help from the military when it rained?
Absolutely. I mean, the floods took place in, February of last year, February 2014. And David Cameron made a pledge that money is no object. But since then, 15 months since that happened, what have they done? What has Adam done? This is his constituency. And recently they made a pledge of 120 million pounds from the central government, and the rest to be funded by the local 6 councils. But nothing has been done. UKIP were the first party, our chairman was the first party to engage with Thames Wash, and we have a letter on file to confirm how disappointed they have been with the Conservatives with the pledges that have been made. Now, only recently they made a pledge, we would donate £1 million. Well, what good is £1 million when you need £256 million over a period of 10 to 15 years to build the defence?
Right. You're shaking your head a bit here, Adam Afriyie, Conservative candidate, but people are disappointed that politicians come and wear their wellies and wade around and say money's no object. But has anyone been to dredge the Thames in Wraysbury? Has a single flood defence been built in Wraysbury in 15 months?
The reason I'm shaking my head is actually I do recognise that we saw Ed Miliband and a few other people fly in. But look, I've been working hard on this issue for many years. I live in Old Windsor myself. We get a bit flooded there. Ham Island, we're up to our waists and... sometimes up to our chest in water, same in Wraysbury and elsewhere. The beautiful thing that's happened, and it's taken a lot of hard work, and I don't recognise Tariq's description of the relationship with Thames Wash. I've been to 2 or 3 of their meetings, and we're actually on the same page on this. What we've secured is 250 million from the government to finish the Lower Thames scheme. This is a huge win, and I'm determined to see that all the way through. So phase 1 has started. The people of Horton, Wraysbury, Old Windsor, Datchet, Ham Island will see this new scheme built, which takes the Jubilee River all the way down to Teddington. This is a great win, and it's one of the things I'm really proud of working.
If local councils and businesses come up with tens of millions of pounds to make up the money.
Oh, believe me, they will.
Windsor and Maidenhead Borough Council always tell me they can't.
It's a negotiation. Believe me, they will.
Everything's a negotiation with you, isn't it?
No, not at all. But the point is that the 250 million pounds is available. There are a few million left to do. There are several other
about 50 million left to do.
Adam,
there are several forums to deal with this in, and you have my word. My constituents have my word that I will fight tooth and nail with Thames and Wash and all the others to make sure we deliver that last little bit of.
Fiona Dent for Labour.
What Adam should have been doing is actually bringing forward that work. The people
it's impossible,
who live,
Fiona. It takes 10 years to do. It's the engineering.
Yeah, the people.
Planning.
Exactly, because the Tory government cut the Environment Agency's funding when they came into power. Now, the people in Wraysbury and Datchet and Runnymede. By the way, my partner's house was in Runnymede was flooded. My car was flooded on the same site and on his driveway. I had to spend a large part of last year mopping up and house sitting, waiting for builders to come in. So I know exactly what it's like. I've been round Datchet, and what Adam should have been doing is working harder along with the Royal Borough, because they're supposed to be working as a team.
Can I just say, this is
George Fussey for the Lib Dems.
Political issue. I think we are all behind the River Thames scheme that Adam was talking about. We all need to make every agency, and particularly the Environment Agency, we deal with this problem and come up with a solution. It won't happen overnight. It can't happen overnight, but we have to do what we can. But we shouldn't be squabbling about it. I think we should all be working together.
Meanwhile, local people are waiting, and they will not have flood defences for about 8 or 10 years. There's nothing in place.
I'm not sure what Fiona thinks. Fiona, what do you think what would you do to speed up the delivery of this?
There's lots of cheaper things that could be done. You could, for example,
the scheme as it is.
The scheme as it is should go ahead, but there should be additions in there. There's cheaper things they could do. They could put in low barriers between places, between the river and landfill sites, because you probably are aware that there was a little boy killed in the floods last year from hydrogen cyanide poisoning that came up from one of the landfill sites during the flooding. His father is now in a wheelchair. You can check it out on truthaboutzane.com. This is a really serious issue. All along the banks of the Thames, there are old gravel pits that have been used for landfill. And the gases migrate through the gravel into people's homes.
Wisdom Da Costa, independent candidate. What do you want to say about the idea of helping the people of Raisbury and, for that matter, Datchet and Colnbrook and Horton, all the places around East Berkshire that were underwater last year? No shortage of politicians turning up then, not much done since.
I agree that we should be putting in more money for flood defences, but I also think that we should be the government should be really fostering insurance schemes which allow both businesses and local residents to benefit from insurance and protect their houses. What I can say is that with Heathrow, this is going to get worse because they're going to be taking up, if a third runway comes in, a vital flood capacity, so water will have nowhere else to go. And finally, in terms of RBWM, with a £33 million hole in their budget, they're certainly not going to be contributing towards this.
Does anyone actually believe the Thames in this area should be dredged? David Cameron was a brief convert to dredging during the flooding crisis, but there's been no extra dredging by the Environment Agency.
There is some dredging that can be done, and I think also the weirs are the first thing that we can start on it if we want to try and improve the flow. But as Adam has said, it's going to take years to do the Jubilee River all the way down to Teddington.
A bit like we're all opposed to Heathrow expansion in the group of politicians we've got here. We all think that the extension of the Jubilee River down to Teddington is the right thing to do. We all agreed it's actually going to happen at the cost of £300 million when the country's got no money.
Well, it should never really have stopped that one, because what happened was when the floodgates of the upstream were opened.
Party that stopped it.
Well,
it has to happen because the cost of not doing it is greater. Because as climate change comes on, and as our weather's change and the weather patterns change, we are going to have more and more floods. The frequency is going to increase, and if we don't spend this money, it's actually going to cost us more in the long run.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the NHS. Big in the campaign from all sides. We're talking to Ed Miliband about this earlier in the programme today, Fiona Dent for Labour. You guys, as I understand it, you've come up with £2.5 billion of money, but also £2.5 billion of extra things you want the NHS to do to spend that money on. In other words, the £8 billion shortfall we keep hearing about isn't covered by that at all.
Well, this $8 billion that we're talking about, there's not one of the other parties that has actually said where they're going to get the money.
Get the other parties for a second, because they can speak for themselves. The $8 billion is identified by the NHS as the money they'll need just to do what they do now. You found some extra money, but you've also found a whole list of extra things you want the NHS to do with it.
Because it takes a lot of work to fix the NHS when it's been left to run down. Even within weeks or possibly even days of getting into power, the Labour government are going to actually start training extra nurses. We're going to put in place another 1,000 places for nurse training in the coming year. So that's moving up from 21 to 22,000. That's a big change. Now, for example...
This is an example of it might be very good things, there might be brilliant things, but you've got a whole list of extra things you want to do, and you've shown where the £2.5 billion comes from. But we've got no idea at all where the £8 billion the NHS needs will come from if Labour are in power. You haven't told us.
Well, that will happen as we build the economy up. I mean, one of the problems with the economy at the moment is that it was flatlined by the current government by all the cuts that they made. Now there are people, the public.
Hang on a minute. The IMF says they're doing a rather good job with the British economy.
Oh well, I don't think people have noticed it, have they? Who's actually noticed this? We've only just begun to see a little bit of benefit to our economy. But people have lost thousands of pounds over the last 5 years. Families have lost that money. They're £1,600 a year worse off, but that is compounded with all the other things they've lost, like paying extra VAT.
OK. Let me ring in some of the other parties, because we've then got Anne standing by with a question about education. Wisdom Da Costa, what needs to happen to the NHS?
I would agree that we must keep it free at the point of use. But when you look at the operation, we've got to ask whether all of the procedures that are actually done by the NHS, which don't affect morbidity or mortality, really need to know what their cost is and whether, as a grown-up debate, we want to continue with all of those procedures.
Right. So what kind of things might you want to stop doing?
Well, possibly some of the more cosmetic surgeries, so rhinoplasty and so forth. But we need more information, more granularity from the government and government departments as to where this money is actually going in detail in terms of procedures and operations. I would also not support continuing privatisation. Because coming from a contracting background, I know that companies are only in it for the money.
Tariq Malik for UKIP. You guys have also found some money for the NHS, but it isn't the $8 billion that the NHS says it needs.
No, we found $3 billion within our manifesto, but we need to look at the overall problems that the NHS is facing. We need to look at the immigration element, which is having a huge impact. And just
a really huge impact. This health tourism thing you go on and on and on about, but actually it's a pretty small thing. Costs about £200 million, which is a lot of money, I know, but in the context of the NHS budget is very little.
Well, look, the facts are there. We talk about the problems with the NHS, with the housing, with everything. The immigration does have a huge impact on this, and I just want to go back one point where Adam said that the planning for the Thames is...
I don't want to go back to flooding because that's a bit confusing for our audience. Let's stay on the NHS for a second or two.
What I do want to say is the fact that the European Union helped Ankara, which is a Turkey, not part of the EU, with a flooding.
OK, I get the point, but we want to stay on the NHS for now. George Fussey for the Liberal Democrats. You guys also have pledged extra money for the NHS. You've pledged the £8 billion the NHS says it needs. Where's it coming from?
The chief executive of the NHS wanted is £8 billion, and we are promising that by 2020. I just wanted to remind you that we have spent £12 billion on the NHS in the last government. And we've increased the number of doctors by 9,000.
Where's the £8 billion coming from?
I'm not entirely sure that we identified exactly where it's coming from, but the Institute of Fiscal Studies says that the plan that we have is sound.
Might work.
And at the very start of the manifesto process, it was up there. It's one of our prime aims.
OK, Adam Afriyie for the Conservatives. You're promising the £8 billion. We've really no idea where you're getting it from. For the Conservatives?
Well, like George says, is that the IFS have said that our figures are robust. The Office of Budget Responsibility in previous budgets has verified those numbers. But remember,
hang on a minute. You've given them no numbers to verify. You've not even told us where the £8 billion is coming from at all.
I was coming to that. But clearly, if we're successful in the selection, which I hope we are, then there will be a budget which sets it out with absolute clarity. But the question is that the question for your audience really is who is better to secure the future of our economy so that we have the economic growth, the jobs and the taxation so that we can afford these things, and I would say it's the Conservatives.
Why do we have to wait till after the election for you to tell us where the money's coming from? You could tell us now. You must have a plan, unless it's based on just kind of vague hope.
No, absolutely. There's always been a very clear strategic economic plan which is clearly delivered for the country.
Where does the money come from then?
With the lowest levels of unemployment since 2008.
Where does the money come from? The £8 billion, where does it come from?
Well, the thing is that the question is you have
That's the question.
Yeah, I know. And you have overall tax revenues, and from within those tax revenues, the £8 billion will be found. So can I lay out the precise nature of the budget that we will deliver if we're successful? No, I can't, and I don't think any political party can.
Does it exist? Does the detail exist somewhere?
But I think that you can safely say that with the Conservatives, we've been very robust on our numbers. We've delivered the fastest growing economy. We delivered £13 billion extra to the NHS when Labour wanted to cut it. We're going to deliver the £8 billion to the NHS when, again, Labour only...
OK, let's bring in Anne. I'm very keen to get in Anne, who wants to talk about schooling. Anne, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being part of this. What's your question for the candidates who want your vote?
Well, I work in education finance. I work in a school, and I'm the bursar. And I am a bit worried. We've got our budgets this year. I'm worried about the future and the erosion of our budgets and trying to manage that budget. And also, there's a lot of things that have been brought in, like pupil premium and free school meals, that all impacts on the school life. And I just wondered, what your comments on that would be.
What are your worries about it, Anne? Do you mind asking which school it is we're talking about that you work at?
Pages.
I got you.
Primary school.
Right, so you're worried about cuts to the budget and also more and more regulation about what you have to do with the budget.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you about this, George Fussey for the Lib Dems, because your party are rather proud of some of these rules and regulations, but here's someone who works in a school saying they're not helpful at all.
I think what we would say is pupil premium is a flagship Liberal Democrat policy, and we hope that is you're making that work in your school to cut the attainment gap for the children who are coming from disadvantaged homes.
And is it working, Anne?
Well, there isn't many disadvantaged homes in our school. We still get pupil premium. But the actual administration of that is like, it's a lot, and we find it, really hard to work.
But we're hoping that as a school, you would like the autonomy to use that money in a way that you think is best. So, I mean, as Liberal Democrats in education, we're absolutely convinced that we need to give more autonomy to schools with a slimmed-down national curriculum. And to, for instance, have an education standards authority which takes ministerial interference out of education and allows the profession itself to set the standards. So we're all about giving the money to you for you to use.
Let me just bring in some of the other candidates because we've got about 3 minutes of our programme left. Wisdom Da Costa, what do you say to Anne, who's worried about the school's budget?
I would agree with her. As a former teacher, we definitely need more support for schools and especially for teachers to reduce their workload, make it more sustainable. Why are 50% of new teachers quitting, the profession?
What do you think that is, Anne?
Well, I don't know why that is, but there's a real problem in this area with recruiting teachers and recruiting good teachers.
Because it's so expensive to live around here, I should think. They don't get paid anymore. Fiona, just 1 second. Let me bring in Tariq Malik for UKIP. Anne's concerned about the school's budget.
Yes. Sorry, I'm losing my breath.
It's okay.
Do you want to go to someone else?
Okay, I will do indeed. Fiona Dent, then. You're keen to get in. Desperate.
Yeah, one of the key the things that teachers are really worried about is the fact we keep having more and more reorganisation of education. Now, for primary schools, what I'll tell you is that if we have a Labour government, we will stop the oversized classes for the 5, 6 and 7-year-olds. We will make sure all classes are under 30 pupils.
Right, just 1 second. Is that a problem in your school in Stoke Burgess?
That's not a problem because
that's no help to her.
I believe that's true already. That you can
we've got something like 1,100 teachers. In the area, 1,100 children in the Windsor area who are being taught by untrained teachers. The other thing we're going to do is ensure that all teachers are either trained or in the process of being trained.
Okay. Let me bring in Adam Afriyie, Conservative candidate for Windsor. What do you say to Anne, who's concerned about the level of admin and concern that whichever one of you guys gets in, her school will have less money?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is just to thank you, especially as a bursar, because I know how stressful that can be. The other thing I would say is that we are really fortunate around Windsor, probably through people like yourself and the teachers that we have here, whether they're qualified officially or not, who are great, who put most of our schools right in the top of the tables. There's no doubt there have been pressures on the budgets, and one that the key measure that the Conservatives, and yes, sure, hand in hand with the Lib Dems, have undertaken over the last several years, was to try to release schools so the head teachers and the bursars can use the money more freely in the way that they see fit. We've also tried to remove the burden of the national curriculum so it's not too specific, that you do have latitude around which to work, and we hope that over time that will give more freedom so that you can make the judgments with the money as you see fit.
And is this working for you, all this freedom? We give you the money, you do what you want with it? Tell him.
Not really. I think there's a lot of pressure put on the administration side, which obviously I'm concerned with especially pupil premium, and because it's all tied to standards and you have to report back, you have to show you've added value and things like this. It's all pressure within school that takes away from teaching, really. It should be the core thing is teaching the children.
And we love it when you come along and give the politicians a hard time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it. To the candidates, thank you so much for being willing to come along and debate with each other. We've got through a whole 3 hours of election programming and no one's mentioned the SNP. That's got to be some kind of record, surely. Thanks ever so much.